Alright, this is a different kind of a video than I usually do from both my main channel, especially, so I just put it up on this one. Essentially, but as you can see, I'm at what is now, or what was known as Muleshoe Curve. It's a bit loud, sorry for all those cars and stuff, but yeah, this is an abandoned line. I usually don't do this kind of stuff, but I just put a little bit of a variety into this weekend and stuff. But do not block. This car, yeah, yep, I shall. Yeah, it's been some snow lately. Although it's been melting a lot of. Although it's been melting in a. Yeah, we did just have a blizzard last week. It was snowy as heck, and like temperatures were low as 15 degrees Fahrenheit, so a lot of it's starting to melt across town, but this is one of the few areas where it's still pretty dominant. But yeah, and I don't blame you if you never heard of a Muleshoe Curve in your life. It was essentially kind of like a state ripoff of the Horseshoe Curve in Altoona, PA, which is about, I think, a 10-minute drive from this place, something like that. But yeah, unlike the Horseshoe Curve, which was erected by the Pennsylvania Railroad itself, I'm just kind of trying to remember from a history class in college. This was constructed by the state of Pennsylvania, and in an attempt to compete with it, but naturally didn't succeed in doing so. And eventually, over time, Pennsylvania Railroad just bought it, started using it. It was originally, I believe, single-tracked. Later, two-tracked it, but then it went back to single-track at some point. Some point, like, I think the 50s or 60s especially, I imagine it would have, because as many of, because if you're familiar with American railroad history, 60s was pretty much the rough point in U.S. railroad history. Railroads were just being strangled to death by overregulation and competition from roads and airways, that stuff. Okay, snow's pretty prominent on the top of the curve, but and during that time, the Muleshoe Curve especially suffered pretty badly. Like a lot of lines, maintenance was kept to a minimum. Not helped by the fact that Pennsylvania Railroad, just like a lot of other U.S. railroads, was in financial ruin. Pennsy had it worse by the fact that they were, unlike their rival New York Central, they were not doing a lot of innovation and trying to keep passenger service alive and that kind of stuff. Trackage wasn't immaculate as many would have thought it to be, and Muleshoe Curve was no exception. Trackage just got worn as all living heck, and eventually, to the point that it was being used even less and less than it was back at its peak, which was still but even then it was still shattered by the Horseshoe Curve, because then again, this was only at 2 tracks at most in its life, whereas the Horseshoe Curve, well, it got to 4. It's now sitting at 3. It's been at 3 now ever since some point in the Conrail age. Speaking of which, eventually, as we all know, Pennsylvania became part of Penn Central, failed, and then Conrail took over. And shortly after, the Staggers Act was passed, which heavily deregulated the railroads and allowed them to finally compete fairly with other modes of transportation. Of course, Conrail started profiting again, and they also had a lot more freedom to trim out any lines that were just not profitable and stuff. And that's basically the first thing Conrail did with the Muleshoe Curve when the act was put into place. So I believe it was like 1981 or 2, something like that. They officially removed the line from the system, and then they eventually just pulled it all up. And so, because, well, it was in already bad shape, not helped by the fact that its shape only got worse when during the days of Penn Central, because, well, Penn Central, as we all know, was notorious for not keeping track up to snuff, and so derailments were just happening all over the place. I imagine a handful probably at least happened on a Muleshoe Curve. But yeah. And like the big reason they even trimmed it out to begin with was, well, just like a lot of lines, it duplicated the primary line, which into Altoona, which traveled over the Horseshoe Curve and stuff. And it also did the same thing to to the branch that now makes up the current Everett Railroad. And I believe from what I remember looking at Google Maps views, that apparently this line even was once a part of the same line that makes up the Everett Railroad, which kind of sucks, because if this line hadn't been cut up before the Everett Railroad was formed, and if they had kept it as a result, they would have had their own little Horseshoe Curve to have that the public could easily access and ride on just a little more often, as opposed to having to travel the real Horseshoe Curve for revenue passenger service and whatnot. It's kind of basically what would have happened to basically this whole story of this place is pretty a similar one to Helmstedter's Curve on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad in Cumberland, Maryland, except that place basically got turned into a tourist railroad along with a good chunk of the Cumberland to Connellsville extension of Western Maryland. But basically just bridging back into, but yeah, that's just bridging further into where the track would have been. I imagine that's, you'd probably would have been able to get some good shots up on that of trains coming through back when it was still in use. But yeah. Yeah, I guess you could have got up there safely using without having to get too close to the tracks back in the days. Oh, there's even a handful of dams out here, similar to the route on the way to the Horseshoe Curve. Heck, if you were like driving to it in whatever direction I came in, which is north, you would have thought for a minute you were on the way to Horseshoe Curve. I was definitely thinking that until I looked closer and noticed some differences, but oh, what's this? Okay, that definitely doesn't look like the remains of some sort of line. That's way too steep to put a train track on back in the days. This is definitely the original route. That was just like some human path made to get to that thing. Oh yeah, that dam. Man, if this was Halloween night, I probably would have been hearing the echoes of Penzi 3 chimes. And, well, just the sounds of steam locomotives coming through. Maybe even have a hallucination and see a ghostly image of one coming through on a tracks laid perfectly in the shape. Yeah, it's nice that they cleaned out the path to retrace the path of the tracks. It goes on for quite a distance. Pretty curvy too. Some more vantage points. Whack, 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 wow, whack, 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 wow, 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 wow. There are so many trees, I cannot even see the other side of the curve from here. Yeah, there's another reason why they all call this a knockoff of Horseshoe Curve. Can't even see the trains that well from the other side, like you could on the Horseshoe Curve. You know well in advance when a train was coming, thanks to enough trees being taken out. And helped by the fact that there's trains coming through. A little ways forward, and I'm starting to see a bit of a little peek at the mountains through that little gap in this tree tunnel. I'm gonna go turn back now because I'm about to go see a movie. It's quite a long ways too. Well, hope you enjoyed, and if you did, well, you know what to do. I'm the Rocket City Railfan, also known as Andrew Alabama. Yeah, Andrew Alabamers. And I'll see you next time.